Thanks for joining us on December 1st for our last webinar of the year. I'm Tanya Meisenholder. I'm the Director of Gender Equity at New York University Policing Project and currently overseeing the 30 by 30 initiative to advance women in policing. We are so excited to be here with Lieutenant Julie Rodriguez today from LAPD. I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of her bio because there is so much that I could say. And then I'm going to hand it over to the president of the National Association of Women in Law Enforcement, Kay Loki, for just a minute, who has a few words she'd like to share with us. After that, I'll turn it back over to Julie, who will spend the remainder of the time walking us through her presentation on personal and professional development and sharing many of the stories that she's had over her 27-year career. After that, we'll open it up for questions, and Julie is more than happy to stay on past the time for any of those of you who would like to connect with her. Before we get started, because we always get asked this, the webinar is being recorded and that will be made available on our website in just a couple of days. And Julie has graciously shared is graciously willing to share, apologies, her PowerPoint slides for anyone that is interested. We will make those available as well. A bit about Julie. Julie has been with the LAPD since 1996. Some of you, that's a bit of time that has passed. It's 27 years. She's had an incredible career, spent a number of years on patrol in a variety of assignments. And then she was promoted to sergeant in 2005. And lieutenant in 2012. She currently is the commanding officer of the West Valley Detectives, where she supervises 50 detectives and 5 professional staff. And I ran through her bio. I will share it with everyone because it is very impressive. But what's most interesting about Julie is her why, her passion, and her purpose, which is really about helping others promote. It's about mentorship, and that is what she's going to be talking about today. It's her own personal story, her journey, and what she's done since then to help all folks in law enforcement, specifically women, with the promotion process. She has a bachelor's degree from Denver and master's degree from San Diego, and also attended the FBI National Academy along with several other programs. And she is the vice president of the Los Angeles Women Police Officers and Associates, and the second vice president of NAWLE, which many of you are familiar with and is an incredible partner to all of us at 30 by 30. Lastly, the best part of her bio is what she talks about her personal life, where she's a chauffeur, a short order cook, and all kinds of other things to 2 teenage kids. So we're super excited to have her with us today. And Kay, I'll turn it over to you for just a minute.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, I am Kay Loki. I'm the current president of NAWLE. NAWLE is the National Association of Women in Law Enforcement Executive. If you're not very familiar with us, please visit our website. I've got to steal a little thunder from Julie real quick because I want to talk about our 28th annual conference. It's going to be in Las Vegas, April 23rd through the 26th, 2020. And we hope that you can join us. The feedback we get from our conferences, people really enjoy. They learn, they network, they get to know each other. So take a look on our website, try to figure out if maybe you could join us on that in April.
That was quite a
And I think somebody's got their mic up. So just real quick about the National Association of Women in Law Enforcement. We basically support women in law enforcement, and we also support men who support women in law enforcement. Our motto, lead, inspire, mentor, that's us. That's us in a nutshell. We're here to make sure that women are successful. And I am so excited that you get to spend some time with Lieutenant Rodriguez. She is our second vice president. She's been with us for almost a year. And I'm telling you, this girl's got some energy. She's a hoot. The thing that I really appreciate about Julie is there are hundreds and hundreds of people that she has mentored, and then upon more hundreds, I think we're in the thousands now. She's helped folks get promoted. So she's bringing a great package. She has experience, she has knowledge, and she's fun. So without any further delay, please let me welcome Lieutenant Julie Rodriguez, Nolly's second VP.
Well, thank you. You know, it's always nice to hear people talk about you, right? And as women, we always say sorry a lot. We don't take compliments well. So I'm trying to do better in that and sit in that space. So I hear you. It makes me a little emotional when people say nice things about me, and I'm grateful for all the nice things, Ms. President, that you did say. And having me here, Tanya, and the Policing Project, NYU 30 by 30, this is a gift. I give it to you freely. That's why I give you the PowerPoint. I have great handouts to send you, 25 questions that are usually asked on interviews. I give everything away. I do that intentionally because I'm going to ask all of you to pay it forward. So if you may not be interested in promoting, but you know somebody in your team and circle is, my ask today is this a train the trainer course. I love to see Chief Moore on here. Thank you, Chief. I see you. I see the men in here, and I'm so grateful because, listen, it takes all of us, men, women, professional staff, our community. We cannot do any of this alone. I was talking to Tanya yesterday. You'll never hear me use the word civilian, or as Tanya says, non-sworn. I don't like those words. It's professional staff, it's support staff. To me, we're legs of a table. Without one of those legs, the table collapses. So I'm so happy to see the range of people from all over the United States, and some with little time on, a lot of time on, and in different leadership roles. It speaks volumes about who you are and why you're here. And so thank you for having me, and thank you for saying yes to yourself and showing up to the dance, right? I always call this a dance, and I'm grateful. So let's see, can you see my PowerPoint there? Yes, okay, good. If you notice the picture in the middle, all of those women are around the same height, they're 5'7". I'm gonna go pretty quick today because we only have 45 minutes. So some things I normally, when I do lecture, I go a little longer on when I have more time. So I'm gonna be quick. I talk fast anyway. So again, this will be sent to you, and I'll stay for questions. I will ask your questions in the chat, and then Tanya can read them at the end.
Sorry, just a minute.
So yes, please do that. Okay. So back in the 60s, the rule for the LAPD was you had to be 5'7" to come on, right? And there was also, and I was trying to find where I read this once before, but you also had to have been married and have had one child. Crazy, right? Our motto in the Los Angeles Women's Police Officers Association was created in 1925. We had one of the first women on the police department in this country in 1910. And our motto is this: we didn't come this far to get this far, right? And so for my organization, we have 1,800 women. For some of you, you may be a party of one. You may be the only person in a leadership position. Maybe you have no women in a leadership position. So what I'm going to talk a lot about today is honesty. I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm going to be very authentic, and I'm going to be very vulnerable. And we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and why that's important in interviews and as we move through as servant leaders. Okay, so I start with these pictures because I want you to know that we've come far. We have, but we've got a ways to go, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So we're going to talk about three things today. We're going to talk about professional development. We're going to talk about personal development, and we're going to talk about mentorship versus sponsorship. And the reason why I think it's important to also talk about personal development is because we have a life outside of this job. And when we talk about recruitment and retention in this country, and 30 by 30, wanting to hire and have 30% women, not only in academies by 2030, but I believe, the focus should also be, let's have 30% of women on our police departments. One of the questions a lot of young women ask is, can I be and do all the things I want to do in my life by joining a police department? There's no secret that we work morning watch, we work weekends and holidays. And what does that look like in terms of wanting to be a parent, maybe? And I'm going to say right now, I will talk about being a mother and setting boundaries because that's what I am. But I also recognize that there's a lot of different responsibilities we have. So we might be caring for elderly parents. We may have special needs children. Maybe we've adopted some family members' children. Maybe we have animals that we love, and when we're gone, they miss us too, and that's a responsibility. So whatever you have in your life, I think it's important that we talk about boundaries briefly, because for a long time, I didn't have them. And let me give you a good example. So I start my first job in the morning, right? I get up, I get my kids up. I have a 16-year-old daughter. She's a real blessing. Okay. If you have teenagers, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I have my husband and I have a 14-year-old son. So my first job, I get the kids up, right? Take the dogs out. I feed the kids. I take the kids to school. Then I go to my second job, right? Which is work. And then at the end of the day, 10 hours later, I go back to my first job. And I go home and my husband and my 2 kids are sitting in the living room. And can everybody take their mics off real quick? This will be fun. Everybody take your volume off. What do you think they said to me when I got home?
What's for dinner?
What's for dinner?
For dinner.
Yes, they said, "What's for dinner?" And you know whose fault that was? That was
Yours.
my fault, y'all. That was my fault. So what do you think I did? Well, I went right into the kitchen and I started making dinner, and I was mad. I was so mad. And I thought that's my fault because I wasn't setting boundaries, right? I didn't tell or communicate how I was feeling. So what I have done in the meantime is I now have a chart in the kitchen, and I have 2 days that I cook, 2 days that my husband cooks, 1 day each of my kids cook, and then we order out or we go to eat, okay? Now, I'm trying to keep that boundary. Why? Because if I didn't vocalize it and say how I felt, that's not healthy. And so look at your life and look at your personal situation and what boundaries do you have, right? Because we talk a lot about in this profession about employee wellness. How are we taking care of ourselves? And it does say in the research that when you set healthy boundaries for yourself with your parents, with your friends, right, with your coworkers, with anybody in your life, it actually improves your health, your wellness, those relationships, right? You have clear expectations for people. Men and women, we talk differently. So having those expectations or what you need is helpful, and it increases our relationships in a healthy manner. It also gives respect and self-respect to ourselves. Okay, so I really wanted to just touch on some boundary setting because I'm 50 years old and I didn't do very well in my first 27 years having healthy boundaries. I wanted to do it all, right? And now I realized I can't. All right, so when we talk about emotional intelligence, that's part of it. Self-awareness, introspection, retrospection. Well, how can I move better in my personal life and on the job? And so I also want you to think about what it looks like for you as you move forward in your career, growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I'm not going to read all this to you because I know you all can see it, but I want you to think about some ways where maybe you've kind of been stuck in your personal life and your professional life, and how you can move through that in a better and healthier way. And some of the ways we can do that is by making a mission statement. So every police department in this country and many corporate employees and jobs have a mission statement. So what I would ask of you is, and this is your homework, is write down your mission statement. Who are you? What's your why? What's your purpose? And when I'm helping people with interviews, I usually say this can almost be your opening if you're given an opening. You know, tell me about yourself. Why do you want the job? Why should I give you the job? Who are you? What are you selling? But I also tell people it could be your closing, right? Those are all the questions we have. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me to help for your qualifications for this position. Yeah, maybe this is your mission statement. And you can write a mission statement that both is personal and professional, right? And so I want you to think about that. I've given you 2 examples of how to write a personal mission statement, what that looks like. And again, it should talk about your mission, your values, your vision. I often talk about, I love Simon Sinek, who talks about start with the why. What is your why? So I ask that of you. I think it's important that you know who you are, what do you want, and write a mission statement out for yourself. And then the second part of that is we look at short-term and long-term goals. Again, if we're looking at our personal development, you don't know where you're going if you have no idea what you want. We do kind of a not so great job at this sometimes. I know in our department we have ratings. We do an annual rating every year. And I don't know in your organizations, does your boss sit you down and say, hey, what are you most proud of this year? Was there something that you really wanted to do or a training you wanted to go to? And did you get to it? Did you go? Did I help you in that? Our job as leaders is to help develop our people. But if we're not having conversations with our people about what they wanted, short-term or long-term, how are we getting there? And when we talk about 30 by 30, I also believe it's important that our units, our specialized units, that we give people opportunities for growth, right? So when we also talk about, which we will later this morning, about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, if your long-term goal is to have a dog and you want to be in canine, what do you need to get there? How are you going to get there? And those are things that are important to you. And as leaders, we need to get you there. So set some short-term, long-term goals, set them, they're both important. And then we're going to talk about that. How do we get there? Well, this is how we get there. Mentorship versus sponsorship. Now, I would love it if we were all in the same room, because this is when I would really try to ask you guys what your thoughts are. But because we don't have that time and energy, let me tell you this. You need them both, okay? I can be your mentor. I can mentor, and I do mentor people all over the United States. I got a call from an officer from Connecticut a couple weeks ago. He was applying for a job. He heard about me. He cold called me, which I love. And I spent 2 hours with him. I can mentor him, right? I cannot be his sponsor. Why? Because a sponsor is somebody who has a seat at the table where decisions are being made about you. I don't have any say within his organization. So I can't sponsor him. Okay. So I often say, whoever has a seat at the table where decisions are being made, that's the person that you need to try and find, go see them, and make sure that they know who you are. So when there's an opportunity, they're going to say, oh, you know what? I know Julie would be really great at that. Julie would be good in this assignment. So that's a sponsor. So that's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. Here it is, so you guys can read it. And you really need to have both. All right. A mentor doesn't have to be in your organization, but a sponsor does. Sponsors should have your voice and be your advocate in the room that you're not. Right. And I will also say this, when we talk about cultures and what normally has happened in the past, let's say there's 5 openings and we have been told, okay, only one's probably going to go to a woman. Right. This has happened. May not still be happening, but it might be. Now Susie and Julie are battling each other because there's only going to be one spot for us in our mind, maybe, right? And so what do? We don't talk, we don't get along, we talk about each other behind our back, we don't do it right. And so what I also want you guys to think about moving forward is, how are we as women lifting each other up? And so that's also part of the conversation today, is that we are going to stop talking about each other. We're going to support each other, and we're going to cheer each other on, because it's no longer, and it shouldn't be any longer, that we're battling each other for positions. And that's the help of a mentor and a sponsor, is to also try to, move us through a better way and how we handle things as women, where we've gotten it wrong in the past. So hopefully, I know I went a little tandem, but that makes sense to all of you. Okay. All right. So you might be thinking, well, how am I going to get a mentor? Couple things. The California Police Officers Association, CPOA, does a really great job with the women leaders in law enforcement. They have a mentorship and mentee website. I show it on here for you. If your department doesn't have one, you can certainly go to this website, kind of get some ideas of how it's done. Basically what they did is in the state of California, they said, who wants to be a mentor? A bunch of us raised our hands. We sent our bios in, and then we were on a database. You can go into the system. Hey, I'm having problems with, you know, maybe addiction. Who can help me? You know, my child has an addiction problem. Who's been down that road? So it's not just about mentorship and sponsorship on a work related. It's anything, work-life balance, suicide, addiction, anything you want to talk about. Our bio states some of the things that we've dealt with, maybe some kind of loss. So that's really a great website. And if you don't have something like that, you know, certainly there's opportunities that you can create. NOLI also has a mentorship component. We're growing it, but that is the link. Again, you'll get this. This will be sent to you. The other thing that we're doing, I'll say, with the LAPD in our Women's Association is the minute somebody signs up to join the Los Angeles Police Department, we get, as mentors who've raised our hand, they'll send us some names. Hey, this person just signed on. And then I'll reach out to, like I asked for, you know, females. I'll get a list of 3 females that, let's say, signed on to join the LAPD this month. And they're in the very early stages of the application process. I will reach out to them and I'll say, hey, my name is Julie. I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere in a little town called Oakley in Contra Costa County. And I moved to Los Angeles knowing nobody. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know north, south, east, and west. I didn't say the streets right. And I would have killed for somebody that could have been honest and confidential to help me through some of the anxiety and just the questions that I had. And so that's what I am to someone else. And then I stay with them. And then I stay with them in the police academy. I'm with someone now. She's finished her 2nd year in the LAPD, and I've been with her for 6 years. And so that mentorship piece you can also do and figure out a way in your own organizations how you do that, what that looks like. It's going to take people to raise their hand, but that's a great, also a different way of looking at mentorship from a capacity of retention. The minute you sign on, now I have to retain you. That's my objective. And how can I do that? It always goes back to feeling valued, supported, and heard. How are we doing that for our people? All right, so now you want to find your sponsor. Now you want to find the person who has the job that you want or help you get the job that you've always wanted. Here's what I want you to do. You have to create your own opportunity. So I want you to request a 10-minute meeting with somebody who has the job you want. Now I'll tell you this, if you try to get on someone's calendar and they say, I don't have time for you, bye. Because that is your responsibility as a leader. And if you don't have the time for me, then you're actually not the mentor or sponsor that I want. So go find someone else, okay? Because that is our responsibility, is to mentor you and to be there for you and answer your questions. So if somebody says, I don't have time, I'm too busy, that's a sign that that's not the right person for you, because we all have time. Might not be this week. It may take me a little bit, and then maybe I don't have 10 minutes, but I have 5. And most of us have traffic. We're all driving somewhere. And because of the beauty of Zoom, thank you, COVID, I can make time. So find the person who has the job you want and ask for a meeting. And then ask questions. I love this one. What advice would you give your younger self? Man, that's powerful, because lessons learned and bumps in the road. And if somebody would have just steered me this way, blessings, okay? And every day is an interview. Every day is an interview. Please don't forget that. Know your audience, and every day is an interview. And I'll give you a quick example. Went to a holiday party. You know, you kind of dress up at your holiday party. And I brought my husband, who's not on the job, works for Edison, which is like a power company, electric, you know, power, DWP, very similar. And 2 officers sat at our table, and one was wearing jeans, kind of like a t-shirt and a hat, a baseball cap. And my husband kind of like gave me the side eye, like, huh. And then during dinner, he said, you know, ma'am, I'm going to apply for the next training officer position, the FTO position. Can I come and sit with you? I hear you help people, you do mock orals, you know, you prepare people. Can I sit with you? I go, absolutely. So I haven't scheduled for the following week. My husband nudges me, he goes, are you going to tell him the truth? I was all, yes, you know it. I'm going to tell him the truth. So when he came to me, I said, hey, every day's an interview. And when you showed up in the hat and you know how you were dressed, I had an opinion of you, right? A first impression is a lasting impression. And I said, and I'm not on your board, but if I was, it's going to be hard to turn that off. You know, you didn't dress in a professional manner for the event, right? And I'm not saying you can't wear what you're wearing, but the baseball hat, just a different, right? So I want you to remember that. And I tell you that because people are watching. And if you're a woman, man, they're watching you even more sometimes. Okay, so I do, when I talk to women about interviews, I kind of talk to you about your hair, your makeup, what you're wearing, because it matters, because we're judged. It's human behavior, right? And I know you all have training on implicit bias, so I'm not going to talk about that today, but that's just part of life and it's okay. But I need you to remember that what you say, how you move through things in your entire career matters. And I often do say to people, listen, I have 27 years on the job. Please don't still think of me as the P2 in Hollywood, because I know I had some bumps in the road. Okay. All right. And I love Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. You know, sometimes I can be my worst enemy. So recognize that in yourself. All right. And I want you to start collecting prior questions. So look for the job that you want and then ask the person, especially let's say you want to be a detective. All right. And you pass your test for the Los Angeles Police Department. It's an actual 100-question multiple choice test for detective, sergeant, and lieutenant. It's a pass fail. And then you have the oral interview and then you get ranked and banded and scored. So once I pass an exam and then before the interview, I would go to the people who've already been successful and I would say, hey, what questions were they asking you? Do you have some of the questions that they asked you? Or if you're going to go to a specialized unit, let's say vice or narcotics, and there is an interview, what kind of questions were asked? And start writing those down. All right. And then for yourself, if you take an interview, what I want you to do is, again, write those questions down and pay it forward and help the next person. Okay, so those are some tips. All right, so now let's get into the professional development part of it. And this is really what has driven me to my purpose and my passion and my why, is because Winston Churchill, I love this quote, success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. And I will tell you that I have failed every exam I've ever taken on the Los Angeles Police Department. I failed the field training officer test when there was a test. We don't have a test for that anymore, but I failed that. I failed detective, I failed sergeant, and I failed lieutenant. And I remember feeling that I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy. And the truth of the matter is none of those things were true. On our department, we have 1,000 people will take a detective exam. And we're just not able to hold 1,000 interviews. So we can only hold maybe 300, 400. So really it's, the tests are based to eliminate people and they're difficult, but that didn't mean that I wasn't smart enough or hardworking enough or deserving enough. It just was, they were difficult. And so what I realized is that I need to go to people who are successful and find out how they studied and how they, were able to eventually achieve those successful tests. Okay. And guess what? I passed all of them. I made FTO. I was a training officer. I was a detective for a very long time. I was a sergeant for a long time. And I've been a lieutenant 11 years by choice. And I tell you that because through that journey got me to where I am now, wanting to pay it forward and help other people. And what I learned is that after you pass these tests and you get to the dance, right, to the show, as I call it, and take the interview, that was just as difficult, because most people don't practice that skill set. You know, it's very hard to find a training course for oral interview techniques, right? Which is why I keep saying, let's do more, let's do more. And if you think about athletes, my son is a nationally ranked baseball player at 14, bless his little heart. I can't imagine putting him in a batter's box and expecting him to hit a home run if he hasn't been practicing for 6 months. But that's what we do, right? We go to an interview, we don't get the job, and we're all mad because they gave it to Susie. And I'm better than Susie. I'm smarter than Susie. I have more time on than Susie. I've worked hard than Susie. And it's like, yeah, but Susie's been working on the skill set, and she showed up to the dance and she hit a home run. And the first time you're hearing your answers out loud, if it's in that space, you're not getting the job. I'm gonna tell you right now, not getting the job. And so I want to really stress that it's important that we practice this skill, and that you do mock orals and you do this for your people. I think it's also important that you guys understand that your stories are unique to you. And most of the questions now in this country are very, tell me about a time you did A, B, and C. It's very rare that I'm going to ask you a specific, what is your department's sexual harassment policy? Might happen, right? What is bias policing? Tell me about your de-escalation or disengagement policy. That's good. You're going to have to define it. You're going to have to know it. But I also want you to become a storyteller. You know, and Abraham Lincoln, people loved him because he was authentic and people connected with him on a deeper level. And he did that through storytelling. You know, in less than 2 minutes and less than 300 words, he said that our nation was free. Think about that, less than 2 minutes and less than 300 words. And that was probably the most impactful. I mean, everybody knows that quote, that statement. It's over in Washington. It's wonderful, right? A nation is free. So I want you to think about your stories, and this is going to help you craft them to get the job you want. Remember, in these interviews, you have 20 to 25 minutes for the board to like you, right? And this is about psychology, really. It's about, if you like me, do I resonate with you? Do you see yourself in me? And do you like me enough to give me the job? So the stories help that. All right. Because I have bombed so many of these, and I'm chatty, as I told you earlier, and I would ramble on and never knew how to finish my thought. I created about 19 years ago, I've been a supervisor for 19 years. I created the 4 bullet points of success because I couldn't figure out a way to land the plane, as we call it in law enforcement, land the plane. So here's number 1. I want you to answer the question. Now you might be saying, Julie, gosh, how brilliant of you answered the question. But here's the thing. If you simply only answer the question and you do nothing else, you will not get the job. Let me say that again. If you simply answer the question, you will not get the job. You have to give me something else, right? And that comes to point number 2. I want you to answer the question and then give me an example or accomplishment of something you've done. That's your story. That connects me to you. So I know, your past performance is a great indication of your future performance. If I know what you've done, I'm going to assume that's what you're going to do. So that's your story. Okay. Now, sometimes 1 and 2 could be the same. Tell me about a time you had a conflict with somebody. What was it? How'd you resolve it? Right. And then point number 3 is really, sometimes we call this the global perspective or the worldly answer. It's the depth and the insight of the issue. I often say, what's the purpose and intention of the question? Why did the chief of police think that this question was important enough that he or she wanted to be asked? And then you're going to be able to find your answer from that, right? So point number 3, internal and external. Tell me why that question or your experience matters internally for you and your people, and externally for the community in which we serve. All right. And then point number 4 for me was to wrap it up, to let you know that I was done, and for me to have a final thought. And it also allows you to see me in the position for which I'm applying for. Because here's the truth, folks. I can't assume that in 3 weeks you're going to be ready to be a sergeant. I have to know right now that you're a leader and you're a manager and you think like risk management, liability. How do I mentor? How do I lead my people today? Right? So your last sentence should be, and as a sergeant, I will blah, blah, blah. This could be a sentence or two, right? Just reaffirms in the job for which you're applying for. Okay, 4 bullet points of success. That's how I craft my answers. That's to keep me on track. Now, how long should your answers be? It should be 2 to 4 minutes. If you're talking for 6, 7 minutes, you've lost me. I'm thinking about something else. I have ADD. I'm sure I'm thinking about, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to make a phone call. Like I'm out, right? So if it's a good story though, and you've got me hooked, I'm okay with 3 to 5 minutes, right? But read the room. After 2 to 4 minutes, you're gonna lose your audience. And if you get about 6 questions, that's a good cadence, right? 25, 30 minutes in an interview. That's what you want. Okay. These are the hot topics in this country right now for assessment centers and interviews. Conflict is always going to be asked, some kind of disagreement. DEI is a very hot topic, diversity, equity, inclusion. How are you treating people internally and externally? Morale and productivity, right? Recruitment and retention. These are very important things that we're looking at, that we're all suffering with because we are losing quality employees who are tired, you know, and then we're now doing more with less. So our people are affected by that. Time management, you know, every interview you now have after you come on the job is a leadership one. And there's always time management. There's always some kind of, we call completed staff work, projects, audits, things that have to be submitted and turned in. Community-based policing, right? That's the reason we're all here, is a life of service to protect and serve the communities, to reduce crime, right? We're looking at crime reduction, crime strategies. What are the tools that we're using? What kind of technology are we using outside of the box? And then how does technology affect underserved communities who feel like they're being stopped and detained more, or certain technologies are directed more towards them? Okay. And then lastly, our employee health and wellness, you know, peer support. How are we taking care of our people? So those are some hot topics. I'm only going to discuss 2 of them later this morning or this afternoon for all of you. Okay, so I do not want you to memorize answers. Trust me, I've tried it. Written the whole thing out, doesn't work. Please don't do that. You can do the 4 bullet points in brevity, but there are words that matter, and words are powerful. And I don't know if you've ever been in an interview where they maybe weren't paying attention, and then you said the word procedural justice, and maybe they sat up and then they started writing something, right? So words do matter. So I have some terms and meanings that I think are appropriate to help you in your preparing for any upcoming interviews. And so I have that slide there for you, okay? Now, how do you prepare? I use a Word document. That way you have it, you can bring it up if you didn't get the job, so that you can prepare for the next job, or you can send it to somebody and help them and pay it forward. And you can start keeping a list of all the questions you've ever been asked, right? So a Word document is like this live document that you will always have. You can re-save it under different things. I also say that if something happens in your day-to-day and you think, wow, that experience would be great for an answer later, go in and write it down, right? Because you don't want to have to be 4 months from now and they say, hey, we're doing interviews next week for ABC. And you're like, and now you're Panic at the Disco, trying to think of your stories. So use that document for yourself. Very helpful. Record yourself on your phone. Record your answer, right? Say it out loud. Say it out loud. And then see, how long was it? How long did I talk for? Oh my God, I talked for 6 minutes, or I talked for 1 minute. And then go back through your notes. Oh, I didn't mention external and internal. And I didn't say what I was going to do when I got the job. All right. And then a mock oral. I do mock orals. I have a list of men and women at the ready to do a mock oral. I had somebody call me up and say, I'm going for a chief's job and I need to do a mock oral. And I called 3 chiefs that I know of and I said, can you do a mock oral next Friday at noon? Yes. And I sent it. So I love being the conduit for other people. But listen, I mean, to have somebody be truthful in a positive, constructive way and say, that wasn't good, or man, that sounded bad, or I need you to add a couple things. I want you to think maybe bigger than you were. Very, very helpful. Plus, you know, you get a lot of those nerves kind of out, right? And then, so you're not as nervous. We'll always be nervous, and nerves are good because that means you want it, right? If somebody comes in and acts like they don't want it, they're not nervous at all. I don't know. Am I judging that? Maybe. So to be passionate, to smile, to be happy, to let me know you're interested and you want this job, that's something that a mock oral will show you. We record it. We let you see yourself back. A lot of times we say the word just too much or that too much. So some of the little nuances that you may say or do, that also comes through in a mock oral. And then practice at home. I practice with my husband. He's not on the job. I'll give him a list of 20 questions and I'll say, ask me anything you want. And then if I use an acronym, he'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He is my community member. Many of our oral boards and assessments have sworn and a community member on it. So now I know, okay, thank you. I don't want to speak in cop speak. I want to speak in a way that everybody can understand what I'm saying. Not, and don't be disrespectful, like, oh, I meant to you know, but that's very helpful. Okay. All right. And again, I go back to the purpose and intention behind the question. Why is it being asked? They're very experience-based. Reflect on your past experience. I will say if there's multiple parts of a question, which we get this a lot, the questions are very convoluted. There's multiple parts. What I'll do is on my hand, I'll put the hand on my lap, maybe under the table, and I'll go one. If they're asking, let's say it's a 3-part, I'll go, okay. And then when I'm answering it, I'll put my fingers down so I know I've got it. That's a little tip that helps me if it's a multiple part question. I'm also going to tell you, it's okay to say, hey, I heard the first part. I didn't hear the other parts. Can you repeat it? Totally fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, if you ask every time, can you repeat it? Can you repeat it? What am I thinking? I'm thinking you're stalling. I'm thinking you don't have the answer. And that may not be the truth, but this is human behavior, right? This is a normal psychology, as we call it, experience, and I'm judgy. So now I'm thinking, oh, maybe they don't know the answer, which may not be true. So remember, it's okay to ask, just don't do that a lot. All right, here's your first possible question. Describe a conflict you had with a coworker. How did you address it, and what was the outcome? Do not tell me what you think I want to hear. I want you to be specific. I want you to tell me something that has some teeth. And if you were the problem, even better. I told you that I failed every test I've ever taken. Did that make you like me more? Did that make you connect with me maybe a little deeper? Maybe, I hope so. Did you believe me? I hope so. So when we talk about our own failures or where we learned or did something, it's believable and it connects us. And so I often say, listen, I did this and maybe I blew up. Maybe somebody did something and I went, 415 crazy. 415 is a penal code section in LA. Okay. Crazy, right? Oh man, I screwed up, right? Or I sent an email and I CC'd a bunch of people. Man, I shouldn't have done that. I have learned I should have sat with it. I should have called a friend and asked for some advice. I should have called my old boss, said, hey, this is what I've got, right? So I want something with some teeth. And the reason we ask about conflict is because it's important in the workplace that people get along. And we're not always going to get along, but that's the purpose and intention behind it, is that we need to treat each other well, right? We need to have places that are not hostile work environments, and that we have the leadership to say, hey, I have to have a tough conversation with you, right? Just like as a parent, my kids make mistakes all the time. but I love you. And there's consequences for your behavior and your actions, but I love you, dust you off, and we move on, right? So lessons learned, what would you do differently? And finish the story. Sometimes people give me these great stories and then they don't tell me what happened. And I'm gonna ask you a follow-up. Hey, well, what happened with that? And some people on a follow-up get like, oh, maybe I didn't answer the question. So now you're in your own head, when really, I just wanted to hear the resolution. And then we get to point number 3, right? Provide a resolution to conflict. If you have resources in your agency, we have a mediation unit, we have a behavioral science services, we have peer support. You know, we have a lot of resources that help people. Because at the end of the day, we're not all going to like each other, but we're going to be respectful of each other. Okay. I also want you to think about risk management and liability. Over a 1-year period, we had $40 million in lawsuits for internal conflicts because we didn't get along in the workplace. $40 million, that's a lot. And who suffers from that? The community, right? So I want you to think about hard data. Google, go to Google. Let's say you have no examples of conflict. Go to Google. Give me an example of conflict. Give me, an example of something, right? Okay. And then finish it up. As a sergeant, I'm going to have timely communication in the workplace. All right, next one, DEI. People have a hard time with DEI. I want you to think about some of the times in your career or where you work. If maybe, I often go back to, we have a lot of officers on the department where their parents are first-generation Americans and didn't speak English when they came here. And I'll say to the officer, how are your parents treated? How did you respond to that when you were a little kid? A lot of officers come on the job because they either had a good example of officers or a bad example of officers in their childhood. So we want to think about that too. So you may not have a personal example, but you can use one from a colleague, which is totally acceptable. And then we're fostering good relationships internally and externally. Google procedural justice. There's 4 tenets: voice, neutrality, respect, and trust. We talk about bias policing, constitutional policing, 30 by 30. These are all things in point number 3 you should be bringing up and things you're doing. You could even say, I attended and went to a 30 by 30 webinar because I care about DEI and the advancement of women in a leadership position, okay? And that we treat all people with respect. Yeah. I only have a few more minutes, so I'm gonna go a little quick. Be yourself, be authentic, and remember, please do not apologize. Do not start with, I'm just a, right, I hear this, I'm just a civilian, which we're not using that word anymore. So don't say that. And don't say, I only have 5 years on the job. Time is not reflective of your abilities, okay? And lastly, tell them what you really want them to know. Do not leave that room without telling them. All right, think about your mission statement. Now, this would be the time I'd pull one of you up on camera and tell you that I'm going to ask you a question, and you'd start, heart would be palpitating, sweat would be going down your face, because this is, I want to get you in the uncomfortable to be comfortable, but we don't have time for that. And again, I want you to, when you sit at the table, have eye contact with everybody. It's okay to use your hands, right? And the board's rooting for you. They really want you to do well. Pay it forward, okay? This is how the rooms used to look. All male white. Your voice wasn't on that in that table, in that space. Okay. The lower left picture, that's me with my hand up with brown hair, because we like to change the color of our hair. And I remember that day, it was actually a deployment meeting, and it was all women, and it didn't even occur to me that it was all women at that meeting until an officer walked in the room, and you see him sitting there in the far corner. There wasn't a seat for him, and he didn't know where to sit. And then the next person who came in, I said, could you take a picture of that? It touched my heart, because I thought, man, we've come so far, right? So I save a seat for a sister. Think about as you journey through and where you're headed, and all of the people that have come before us. Please save a seat for a sister, and pay it forward. I'm gonna let you read that real quick. So this goes back to, don't allow people to gossip about anybody, including women. Somebody comes in and starts saying something, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you there. You got a problem with Susie? Go talk to Susie, right? We're not doing that. We're not battling against each other anymore. We're supportive. We're lifting each other up. We all have a seat at the table. Okay. I will say this. We want to be promoted and hired because we're qualified and because we have experience. So recognize that as well. I have been a token woman chosen for a unit. 1999, we had a new bike unit established. They said, you got to have one woman on it. So I was told, Julie, you're going to be the token. They said it, Julie, you're going to be the token female. Great. Happy for it. Wonderful. I'll be your token female. But guess what? No one's going to outwork me. I'm going to do the very, very best. And I'm going to show you why I deserved a spot there in the first place. So if something gets me in the door, I'll tell you what, no one's going to outwork me. And I'm going to be positive and I'm going to be grateful. But I want it because I'm also qualified. Okay. There are places that are not ready for diversity of thought. That's okay. That's all right. So if you've applied and you're not getting it, and there's never going to be an opportunity for you, well, stop shrinking to fit places you've outgrown. Sometimes you got to move out to move up. And you have to figure that out for yourself. That's when a mentor, a life coach, somebody in your life, go find somebody to work through that for yourself. But some places, they're not ready. And you don't want to go to a place either where you're not going to be valued, supported, heard. Don't wait, don't procrastinate. Success meets opportunity and preparation is there. So set your boundaries, okay? Create a mission statement and some goals, and then pay it forward. My president, Kay Loki, already talked about our conference. Love to have you all there. It's Vegas, so who can say no to Vegas? You know, I'm going to be there, so we'll have fun. And this is me. So I'm wearing a uniform. We had a 150-year anniversary, and I was asked to wear a uniform that an actual woman wore in 1960. And I remember putting it on in the locker room, and I started to tear up and have tears in my eyes, because when I put my lieutenant's badge on, I knew that she could have never achieved that rank. We did not promote women past the rank of sergeant until after Franchon Blake won a lawsuit that took 7 years in 1982. And so I say that because, again, you know, you have to know your history. You have to know how far we've come, and how far you all have now to lead the next generation of women. And that middle picture was during the riots of 2020. I didn't go home for 10 days. I was a mobile field force leader. I had 60 cops, 6 sergeants, and I was so proud to lead this organization. So that's my present. I've been in operations. I love it. Patrol is the lifeblood. Let's take care of our officers, please. Boots on the ground, as I call it. And then that's my future. I'm excited for what's next. I'm on the captain's list. I hope to someday make captain in the LAPD. I have postponed it 5 tests. I've passed 5 tests up because I wanted to be a good wife and mom and watch my babies grow up. And so we didn't talk a lot about, you know, the sacrifices we make as women, but we do. And we have to make certain sacrifices that maybe our men don't have to think about. But you can still have it all. It may just be different timing for you. But please, let's connect. There's my information. We now have open for questions, and I think I'm almost done. All right. I hope that was wonderful and helpful.
Julie, that was awesome. You are fantastic. Everything that you say you are radiates right through the screen. I'm so happy that you were here with us today. You know, a couple of quick points. I know we're at time, and for those of you who have questions for Julie, in just a minute, I'll stop the recording, and anyone that wants to stay on and ask her questions, feel free to do that. But some of my key takeaway is the point you made. If someone doesn't have time for you, move on. There's plenty of people out there that do have time for you and that want to support you in whatever role you're in. So find those people and go after them. Move on and do it. Every day is an interview. I spent nearly 20 years in the NYPD, and, you know, recently left to join 30 by 30 or 30 by 30. Couldn't be happier, but that is something that I thought about all the time. How you show up every day and how you treat people. They remember. And it's really important. And then to think about what your purpose is, be introspective, be self-aware, understand who you are and what you want is really critical to leadership for me. I think you manage things and you lead people, and leadership for me is about growth, it's about learning, and it's about giving. And everything in your presentation resonates with that. And I'm just so thrilled that you were able to do this. I mean, the work you do is amazing, and thanks for sharing.